I respect my dad's new girlfriend more than my mom. My mom cheated on my dad 7 years ago with my stepdad. I was 10 at that time. I knew that my mom had another boyfriend that made them to get a divorce. My dad was devastated to say the least. My dad fought hard to get custody from my mom because he did not want to lose me at all. He did end up getting 50-50. Ever since my parents' divorce, I've hated my mom. I hated that she hurt my dad. I remember my dad drinking himself to sleep after the divorce. I was 11 and had to push him out of the couch and cleaned his vomit. I saw what my mom did to my dad, and my stepdad was also to blame for it. My dad did clean up and started to make changes in his life and became a good father figure for me. But he still suffered from the aftermath of my mom's infidelity. He was finally in a better place now. He has worked enough to build a relationship with me too. Suffice to say, the relationship I had with my mom never recovered. I hated going to her place and watching her play family with some random guy. She never made an effort to keep our family together, yet she happily became the loving wife to him. I hated him too. My mom tried really hard to make me forgive her. She said sorry and apologized. I never missed a chance to remind her that she was the one who broke my family. It will make her cry that her own daughter wants nothing to do with her, but I didn't care. I would lock myself in my room the entire time and not come out. I was always loud and clear that I don't like my stepdad, even though he also tried to make it up to me. Any gift he would give me, I would just give it away. Last year my mom, Alan, and I had a huge fight. I called my mom a cheating woman who destroyed my family. I also called Alan a homewrecker and said, I hope your own son gets cheated on so that you know what the pain is like. Alan screamed at me that he is tired of my nonsense. I left their house and went to stay with Dad. I thought it was so unfair that my mom lives happily ever after and my dad was left behind to pick the pieces of our broken home. That's when my dad sat me down and told me that I should have never talked to my mom like that. Sure, she made a bad choice, but she is still my mother. And then he told me he forgave her, and it is for the best that I forgive her because it will make me free. My dad went on to explain that in his therapy he realized his marriage had problems. He thought that just because everything was going on a routine and there was silence, he took it as a sign that everything was fine. However, he learned a lot about relationships and himself over the last 7 years and has tried to become someone I could look up to. He tells me he is dating someone else and he is happy with the life he is now, though there are some triggers. I was happy to hear that my dad was doing okay. And it made me realize I was being irrational. I am still mad at mom, but I decided to give her a chance. I said sorry to both my mom and stepdad. I also said sorry to my stepbrother and my half-brother. Things have been calm and cool for a while. I met my dad's girlfriend. She seems awesome. She has 2 kids who are under 10. Though she is much younger than my dad, I didn't care. As long as dad is happy, I'm happy for him. So, a few days ago, I was chatting with my mom. I brought up the fact that I met my dad's girlfriend this week and she seems nice. My mom's expression changes. She went from having a smile to frowning. She says, I didn't know your dad was dating. I said I didn't either, but my dad is taking things slow. I told her she is really nice and cool. My mom then lashed out and called me a hypocrite. She said that for years her stepdad and her have been trying hard to make me forgive them. They went out of their ways to make it right. And I still didn't accept them. But I accepted my dad's girlfriend in a heartbeat, and suddenly she is this cool step-parent. I was angry too, so I blurted out, at least she didn't cheat on my dad like you. I also said that I would never accept my stepdad as a good human because he is the reason why I grew up in a broken family. That I do not owe them anything after how they treated my dad. I respect my dad's girlfriend more than I respect them because at least she didn't cheat on him and left him to pick up the broken pieces of our family. In fact, she is the reason why dad is happy now, and she will always be above my stepdad. I stormed out and stayed with friends. I know I shouldn't have said that. I mean, firstly, my dad and his girlfriend have only been dating for 6 months. My mom and dad were married for 13 years. And I felt like I oversold their relationship to mom. What is the story of the greatest act a teacher has ever committed? In my junior high school, we had a Vietnam vet for a science teacher. Let's call him V. V was the kind of dude you just could sense had it together in times of panic. In the 3 years we were there, I almost never saw him do more than crack a calm smile. Then, in 9th grade, this girl, Amy, who showed up late to our first period class every day and was kind of quiet, well, she didn't show up at all. For some reason, instead of marking her absent, he called the office and had a very quiet conversation. He looked visibly disturbed and shaken. The next day, the girl showed up to class just a bit late, but with a broken nose, a black eye, and her jaw wired shut. Even though this was 25 or so years ago, I can still see the look on V's face when he saw her. It was pure murderous fury. He was lit on fire inside. And even more terrifying, he pulled her into his office, had a calm conversation with her, and sent her to the nurse. He then told the rest of us that nobody was to say anything to her about it as she'd had an accident and was embarrassed. Most people didn't care. Quickly the rumor spread. I happened to be passing the office on my way home that night, and I saw the principal, and 2 police officers, V, and Amy, in there with the door shut. She was crying. One of the police officers noticed me looking and pulled the blinds. I normally walked home, so I waited. I think school got out around 2:30 or so, and I usually hung around with some friends to listen to music or play basketball for 30 minutes or whatever before I started walking. I waited outside the front of the school until almost 4 p.m. Finally, a car pulled up and this dude got out looking pissed off. He is swearing to himself, and as I'm the only one out there, he says, "You. Where's the friggin' office?" I just pointed. But he didn't make it to the door. The 2 cops came out quickly, one in front and one behind, and the one who approached the guy started telling him to calm down. This angry dude just loses it and starts screaming. My daughter should have been home an hour ago and I had to leave work, I'm gonna sue. Basically just furious. The cops are trying to calm him down. Then out of nowhere V comes out the side door of the office, his face lit like the fires of hell, and he just straight up goes full horizontal, 4 feet in the air, and body tackles this guy. In seconds he's on top of him and has probably hit the guy 10 times, closed fists and all. Worse yet, he's not saying anything. He's not making any noise, just deep, rhythmic breathing like you'd do when weightlifting. Short breath in, long breath out. Smack. 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 The cops actually kind of take their time getting him off the guy. One casually handcuffs the guy, the other handcuffs V, who is standing, untouched save for some bloody knuckles, and is just breathing steadily. Face red from exertion, eyes wide in anger and satisfaction. He still hasn't said a word. Nobody seems to notice me. The principal calls to me. Come in here. Get inside. Or go home. This isn't about you. I decide to walk home. As I'm heading up the road, an ambulance, sirens and all, flies past me towards the school. The next day V wasn't in school and we had a substitute. And of course, I had told some of my friends what had happened. I mean, wouldn't you? By the end of the day people were telling me the story and it was completely wrong, of course. The next week, without any explanation at all, V was back. First thing I noticed was written on the chalkboard. If you ask, you go to detention. His face made it clear he wasn't to be tested and did not have a sense of humor about it. Nobody saw Amy again after that. I don't know what happened. About 5 or 6 years ago I was telling this to a friend and he said, "Why don't you just look her up on Facebook?" I felt stupid, I hadn't thought of that. I went to my mom's, broke out my junior high yearbook, and found her last name. I'd forgotten it. Typed it into Facebook and found a couple dozen options as her name is pretty common. Eventually I found her on LinkedIn, of all places. She's a high school guidance counselor and has been for almost 20 years now. Her photo looks happy. She ended up going to the University of Colorado, master's program. I googled her a bit out of curiosity and found some articles she'd written for various anti-bullying and abuse awareness and management things. Well written. One of them was told like a fictional story. A girl came to school late every day. Lacking in energy. She had no personality of note and was quiet and meek. She wore loose-fitting clothing. She had few friends. It was evident to me pretty quickly she was talking about herself. In the story she wrote, the girl had been abused for years by her stepdad, an alcoholic. And it took a teacher with no training at all to determine what had happened and start the chain of events that ended the abuse. The point of the story was to teach other teachers what signs to watch out for. What personality traits to look for. What was the moment you knew you were going to marry your girlfriend? She was my girlfriend at the time. We were both in college. She was accepted to a year-long study abroad program to Japan. She left and we had sad goodbyes. At this point we've been together for years. I've been deployed before, so we were used to having a long-distance relationship from time to time. About halfway through her study abroad program, we all went to visit her. The first thing that gets mentioned is that I picked up another job so I could afford a plane ticket to see her with her family. I insisted on paying for my own ticket and stay. Her father knew I didn't make a lot of money and this was a big thing for me. He agreed to let me pay for the plane ticket, but he insisted on paying for everything else. We went all over the place and he paid for everything. I always offered, but he always pushed my card away when I tried to pay. Now, my girlfriend is not the most emotionally expressive person. She's quiet, cute, petite, with some witty comebacks from time to time. She's very logical and doesn't like showing her emotions that much. But when I was there, she couldn't get enough of me, not trying to brag. She was super excited to show me everything and never wanted to leave my side. She also gets embarrassed easily. I didn't know the language, but when I saw her struggling and getting embarrassed when trying to order something, I calmed her down and we would make it happen. Neither of us knew how to order in their language. She was embarrassed the whole time, but she also smiled the whole time. She said she didn't feel afraid with me around, even though I was more lost than she was. We were at the airport, about to return back to the US when her father pulled me aside and suggested we get some food. We sit down at some random sushi bar and he starts going on about how he loves his daughter. He mentions that all his life, he has tried to protect her and make her feel safe in the world, and that I was able to do that by just existing. He said that he has never seen his daughter in such an elated mood and that he always wants her to feel that way. I told him that if making her elated is the least I can do, then I've succeeded, something along these lines. He started crying and said he never thought he'd ever see his daughter smile so much and that it's something he wants to see in the future on a more permanent basis. There was some talk of marriage prior to this but nothing serious. He then said, "If your intentions are to marry my daughter, then you have mine and my wife's full support and I would be honored to be your father-in-law." He then brought up money. I thought he was talking about the food bill at first and I tried to pay it before him, and said that he knows I'm struggling to pay college and make it by. He said that he has been living nice most of his life and that he only wishes the same for his daughter. He knew I came from a poor family with nothing to give, so he offered to pay for the wedding and the honeymoon and any other expenses that might come up to include a house. I was speechless but knew that I just made it into the inner circle.